It started on a night that felt like any other. The kind of night where exhaustion sinks deep into your bones and you just want the world to forget your name. But that night in a crowded restaurant called the Viridian, someone did remember her name. And it changed everything. Maya Lewis was 27, a waitress who could speak 6 languages fluently. Not that anyone cared. Her degree in linguistics hung above her bed in a shared apartment with paint peeling from the walls. At the Viridian, she was known not as Maya the polyglot, but Table 6, because that's what she was paid to serve. Tables, not potential. That evening, the restaurant was packed. Jazz music curled through the air and the chandeliers burned with soft gold light. Wealthy guests laughed too loudly. Crystal glasses clinked. Then from the center of the room, a sharp, cold voice sliced through the sound. "Maya Lewis," said Veronica Hale, the restaurant's manager, her red nails flashing under the lights. "Come here." Maya froze, balancing a tray of champagne flutes. Veronica held up a paper, Maya's resume, printed neatly, full of accomplishments. 6 languages, Veronica said with a brittle smile. "French, Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, Spanish, and Italian. That's cute." The crowd chuckled softly, sensing blood in the water. "We didn't hire you to impress guests with fancy words," Veronica continued. "We hired you to carry plates. Know your place," and then, in one brutal motion, Veronica tore the resume in half. The sound ripped through the room louder than the jazz ever could. Half the guests gasped. The other half looked away. Maya's face burned. She wanted to disappear. But the pieces of her resume didn't vanish. They fluttered through the air like confetti of humiliation, landing on her tray. She stood frozen, her hands trembling. No one moved to help. Not one person. And that was the moment everything began. 30 minutes later, Maya was still trying to steady her breathing when a man at table 8 lifted his hand. He wasn't like the others. Older, composed, sharp eyes that missed nothing. The kind of man who had power and knew it. "Miss," he said with a warm but precise tone, "could you come here, please?" She approached, cautious. The man wore a tailored suit the color of midnight. His cufflinks gleamed with emerald stones. When he spoke again, his accent carried a soft Middle Eastern rhythm. "Can you read Arabic?" he asked quietly. Maya blinked, startled. "Yes," she said slowly. "Why?" He slid a folded note across the table toward her. "Translate this," he said. "I'll pay you $10,000. The number didn't make sense. She thought she misheard. But his expression stayed grave. She unfolded the note and her heart nearly stopped. The Arabic words were written in hurried strokes. "Don't drink. There's poison in your glass." Her throat closed. Her eyes darted to the 4 glasses of red wine shimmering in the candlelight. Every muscle in her body went cold. At that moment, Maya Lewis, the woman publicly humiliated half an hour earlier, was suddenly the only person in the room who could save 4 lives, and she had only seconds to decide what to do. Maya's fingers trembled around the note. The letters swam in front of her eyes as her brain caught up with what she was reading. She glanced at the 4 glasses of red wine glinting under the chandelier, then at the guests laughing around the table. Every second stretched thin. The man who had handed her the note watched her with steady eyes. He looked older, his face marked by years of authority. She recognized him now. Karim al-Zahir, a billionaire businessman from Dubai. His photo once printed on the cover of a magazine she'd read at the library. His calm didn't fit the message he'd just passed her. "Translate it," he said again, voice low. Her throat was dry. "It says not to drink," she whispered. Karim leaned forward. "Speak louder," her voice shook. "It says there's poison in your glass." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one of the men at the table pushed his chair back hard enough to shake the floor. Glasses tipped, red wine spilling like blood over white linen. Security guards appeared out of nowhere. The music stopped mid-note. Veronica, the manager, came running, her smile strained. "Is everything all right here?" Karim looked at her briefly. "We need a translator now. Arabic and English," Veronica blinked. "Of course, I'll call our service. They can be here in 2 hours. 2 hours?" One of the guards switched to Arabic, his tone urgent. Maya caught every word. Someone had tampered with their drinks. They had seen it happen. They needed police, but none of them spoke English well enough to explain. She froze beside the next table, pretending to refill a glass. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She had spent years studying Arabic on old headphones during subway rides, teaching herself through podcasts. Egyptian, Levantine, Gulf dialects. Hours that had never paid off until now. The guard's voice rose. "This cannot wait." Kareem's gaze found her again. He saw the flicker of understanding on her face, the way she flinched at the Arabic words. Recognition passed between them, silent but absolute. "Come here," he said quietly. Maya hesitated. Every instinct told her to stay invisible. But her feet moved anyway. He held out the folded paper again. "Bring this to your manager," he said, testing her. She took it, eyes dropping once more to the warning written in bold script. The room tilted for a moment. "You can read it," Kareem said, not asking. Maya nodded. "Translate it for me," he said, voice soft but edged with command. $10,000 now. Lives depend on it." Every sound faded, the chatter, the clinking glasses, the hum of the air conditioner. She could hear her own heartbeat. Veronica hovered nearby, her face tight with confusion. Everyone waited. Maya forced her voice to steady. "It says, don't drink. There's poison in your glass." The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Chaos followed. Kareem shoved his wineglass away, the liquid splashing across the table. His companions jumped back, shouting. Security stormed in. One guard's hand went to his jacket. Another shouted in Arabic for everyone to step back. Veronica demanded. "What did she say?" Kareem ignored her completely. He spoke to Maya instead, his tone clipped but measured. "Where did you learn Arabic?" "Brooklyn Public Library," she answered before thinking. He raised an eyebrow. "Self-taught?" "Yes." He switched languages seamlessly, testing her fluency. French, Russian. She responded in each without hesitation. His expression shifted from suspicion to respect. He pulled out his phone, dialing. "Police. Now." Then to Maya. "Stay. We'll need you to translate." Veronica tried to interfere again. "Mr. Alzire, she's not trained for this. She's just a waitress. She's a linguist," he said coldly. "And she just saved 4 lives." For the first time in years, Maya stood taller. Every guest was staring now. The woman whose resume had been torn to shreds was suddenly indispensable. Police sirens pierced the night outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the restaurant windows. Officers poured in, led by Detective Alan Morris, a man in his 40s with weary eyes. He flipped open a small recorder. "You're the translator?" Kareem answered for her. "She is," Morris nodded. "Let's begin." The guard started speaking rapidly in Arabic. Maya translated smoothly, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. At 8:43 p.m., he observed bartender Carlos Mendez add a clear liquid from a vial into 4 wine glasses for this table. Morris looked up sharply. "He's sure?" "Yes," Maya said. He recognized the behavior, furtive movements, checking over his shoulder. The detective wrote quickly, then glanced at her. "Your Arabic's good. Where'd you study again?" She hesitated. "Library. Mostly after work." That silence afterward was heavier than applause. 5 years of night shifts, of notes scribbled on napkins, of rejection emails saying we're looking for someone more traditional. Every hour she'd ever spent trying to prove she was more than a waitress now, gathered behind her like armor. Kareem was watching her carefully. There was understanding in his eyes, maybe even admiration. When another officer arrived to take the bartender into custody, Morris turned to Maya again. "He speaks Spanish. Can you handle that too?" "Yes," she said. Veronica's voice was sharp. "Detective, this is irregular." "She prevented a mass poisoning," Morris replied. "That's regular enough for me." Kareem removed his wallet and placed a thick stack of bills on the table. 10,000. As promised. You earned it. Maya stared at the money. It didn't feel real. She could see her mother's face in her mind. Her mother who'd cleaned offices until her hands cracked. Who'd told her, "Learn something they can't take from you." Maya took the cash with shaking fingers. Then she turned toward the bar where Carlos Mendez stood pale and sweating in handcuffs. "Ask him why," Morris said. Maya switched to Spanish, her voice calm, professional. "Why did you do it?" Carlos looked at her, eyes wild. He started to speak fast, denying everything. She translated. "He says he didn't do anything." "He doesn't know what this is about." Morris frowned. "Ask about the vial," she asked again. This time his tone changed. Defensive, stammering, the verb tenses tangled in his speech. Maya stopped. "He's lying," she said quietly. The detective looked at her. How do you know? He changed tenses mid-sentence. People who tell the truth stay in one time. Liars switch between past and conditional. He's building a story. The room fell silent. Morris studied her, then leaned closer to Carlos. Tell her we found the vial in the trash, Maya translated. Carlos broke. He confessed everything. How a stranger had paid him $50,000 to poison 4 glasses meant for Kareem's table. How he didn't know what the substance was, only that it would kill quietly. Maya's voice stayed steady as she translated every word, but inside she was spinning. 30 minutes ago she'd been invisible. Now the police were depending on her, and a billionaire was watching her with gratitude that could change her life forever. Kareem turned to her. You stay for the rest. I trust you more than anyone here, Maya nodded. The woman who once carried plates now carried truth. The night that had started with humiliation was far from over, and what came next would redefine everything she believed about herself, about power, and about what it means to be seen. Maya stayed near the table while the officers gathered evidence. The restaurant was still humming with nervous whispers. The air smelled faintly of spilled wine and fear. Outside, flashing lights painted the walls red and blue. Detective Morris turned to her again. We'll need you to translate everything. Statements, reports, all of it. She nodded, though her mind was still reeling. 5 years of silence and invisibility had vanished in a single night. Kareem stood beside her now, calm again, his authority returning. Miss Lewis, he said, you saved my life tonight. That's not something I forget. Veronica appeared behind them, her smile brittle. Maya, that's enough for tonight. You can return to your tables. We'll handle it from here. No, Kareem said sharply. She stays. She's the only one I trust to speak for us. Veronica's expression twisted. She's just a waitress. She's a linguist who prevented a tragedy, Kareem replied. There's a difference. Maya felt something rise inside her that she hadn't felt in years. Strength. The same strength that kept her awake studying when everyone told her to give up. The detective returned with Carlos, now seated and trembling. He's ready to talk. Let's get this on record. Maya stepped forward, taking a slow breath. Tell me what happened, she said in Spanish. Carlos looked up, exhausted. It wasn't supposed to go this far. A man approached me 3 days ago. Said I'd never get caught. $50,000 for 4 glasses of wine. Maya translated every word, her tone even and clear. Did he say what was in the vial? Morris asked. Carlos nodded miserably. A toxin. He called it ricin. No taste, no color. The symptoms start hours later. Kareem's security guard spoke in Arabic. This matches what our intelligence warned. His business rival is escalating. It was meant to look like a heart attack. Maya caught the translation before Morris had to ask. They believe this confirms an assassination attempt ordered by a competitor. The detective frowned, scribbling furiously in his notebook. You're good, Miss Lewis. Ever consider working with law enforcement? Maya smiled faintly. Until tonight, no one ever asked. The questioning lasted nearly 2 hours. By the end, the bar was sealed off, the suspect taken away, and every guest dismissed. The chaos finally settled into a heavy quiet. When the last officer left, Kareem approached her again. He handed her a simple white card embossed with gold letters. My office number, he said. Call me tomorrow. I have something in mind for you. Maya took the card carefully, as if it might vanish if she blinked. Veronica watched, her lips tight. When Kareem and the police left, she turned on Maya, voice sharp. You made a spectacle of yourself. I don't know what kind of performance you think that was, but this is a restaurant, not a movie. Maya looked at her calmly. A man tried to kill people. I stopped him. You overstepped, Veronica hissed. And don't think saving a few lives changes your job description. You're still a server. Know your place. Maya's chest tightened. She'd heard those words too many times. From teachers who told her she was too ambitious. From managers who said she was overqualified. From strangers who assumed she didn't belong. But before she could respond, a new voice cut through the room. Deep, calm, authoritative, Miss Hale? They turned. The owner of the restaurant, Richard Cole, stood in the doorway. Silver hair, immaculate suit, eyes that missed nothing. My office now. Veronica's face paled. She followed him without another word. Maya stood alone in the silent dining room, heart pounding. She thought she'd be fired. She thought this was the end. 15 minutes later, Richard returned. Miss Lewis, he said. My office, please. She followed him down the corridor, her palms slick with sweat. Inside, he motioned for her to sit. A single file lay open on the desk, her original job application. "I spoke to Mr. Al-Zahir," Richard said. He told me what happened. Then I did some reading of my own. He turned the file around. Her resume was inside. The same one Veronica had shredded in front of everyone. On top of it, his own handwritten note from 5 years ago. Interview, high potential. Below it was Veronica's note. Overqualified. Suggest entry-level position for cultural fit. Richard sighed. That was my failure. I approved her judgment without question. You should have been on the management track from day one. Maya's eyes burned. 5 years of lost time pressed down on her. I can't give you those years back, he said quietly. But I can give you what you earned. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. Inside, a contract. Director of International Relations. Salary 4 times what she made. Authority to build her own team. Maya's hands shook. I don't understand. You're the most qualified person in this building, Richard said simply. You were just never given the chance to show it. Consider this your second beginning. He stood and extended his hand, not as a boss, but as an equal. You were always a leader. You just needed the room to prove it. For a long moment, Maya couldn't move. Then she reached out and shook his hand. That night, she walked out of the restaurant with $10,000 in her bag, a new contract in her hand, and the weight of 5 invisible years falling away with every step. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The next chapter of her life wouldn't just be about proving herself. It would be about changing the world for everyone who had ever been overlooked the way she had. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in front of a door that bore her name in polished brass. Maya Lewis, Director of International Relations. She traced the letters with her fingertips, barely believing they were real. Inside her new office, sunlight spilled across a desk piled with files, travel guides, and a small vase of lilies sent by Kareem's assistant. Her first week had been a whirlwind of meetings. New responsibilities. New expectations. Yet each day she woke up with the same disbelief. Just 2 weeks ago, she'd been told to know her place. Now her place was here, in the boardroom, shaping the future of the restaurant group. That evening, the Viridian hosted a dinner for the French ambassador and his wife. Maya had spent days preparing every detail, menu translations, cultural customs, staff briefings. She stood in the lobby as the couple arrived, elegant and composed. Veronica greeted them first, stumbling over basic French phrases she had memorized from a translation app. The ambassador's wife frowned, unimpressed. Then Maya stepped forward. Her French flowed effortlessly, polished, natural. The ambassador's wife's eyes lit up with relief. Enfin, quelqu'un qui parle correctement, she said. Finally, someone who speaks properly. The dinner was flawless. The next morning, Richard called her into his office holding a letter of commendation from the ambassador himself. He said you turned a formality into friendship, Richard said, smiling. Keep doing that. Soon after, 6 CEOs from Shanghai arrived without their translator. The staff panicked. Maya simply walked over, greeted them in Mandarin, and began explaining the restaurant's menu. The tension vanished instantly. By the end of the night, they'd signed a catering deal worth $200,000, the largest in 2 years. But it wasn't the numbers that moved her. It was the look on their faces when they realized someone saw them, spoke to them, respected them in their own language. The restaurant changed because of that. Employees began looking at her differently, not just as a miracle story, but as proof that real talent didn't always wear a title. Then came the night that tested everything. A Friday evening rush. A wealthy Russian guest named Victor slammed his glass onto the table, shouting that his food was unacceptable. Staff froze. Guests stared. Maya stepped forward calmly, speaking to him in fluent Russian. He stopped mid-yell, startled. She didn't lecture him or argue. She simply asked what was truly wrong. His face crumpled. In broken words, he said his son had just been in a car accident back home. The anger was grief disguised. She arranged a car, called a Russian-speaking driver, and walked Victor to the door herself. Before leaving, he took her hand and said quietly in Russian, "Thank you. You saw me." Those words stayed with her long after he was gone. That night, as she passed table 8, the same table where everything had started, she saw a new server. Young, nervous, black, shoulders tense under the weight of invisibility. The girl's hands trembled as she served a VIP party. Maya caught her eye and smiled. Just one small nod that said, "You belong here." The girl straightened, exhaled, and smiled back. That simple exchange hit harder than any applause. It was the moment Maya understood what Richard meant when he said, "The best leaders reveal other leaders." From then on, she made it her mission to do just that. She launched a language training program for staff who spoke more than one language, but had never been asked to use it. In 2 weeks, the restaurant saw a surge in international clients. But more importantly, employees began walking taller. People started talking about her, how one woman had turned humiliation into power, how she'd built bridges across cultures with nothing but her voice and her will, and yet she knew she wasn't done. A month later, Richard called a meeting. All 12 restaurant locations were connected through video screens. Managers, chefs, and servers filled the room. Richard stood at the front. 5 years ago, he began, a woman applied for a job here. She spoke 6 languages and had a degree in linguistics. We made her a dishwasher. Whispers filled the room. She washed dishes for 3 years, Richard continued, served tables for 2 more. We told her she didn't fit the culture. We wasted 5 years of brilliance because we didn't look past her uniform. He gestured toward Maya. That woman is standing right there. Maya froze as everyone turned to her. She saved 4 lives. She brought in more international revenue in 1 month than we've seen in 2 years. As of today, she's Director of International Relations across all 12 locations. She has my full authority to build her team and hire anyone she believes deserves a chance. The applause began slowly, then grew until the whole room was standing. Some people wiped their eyes. Maya could barely see through her own tears. Richard handed her a new nameplate, heavier than the first, engraved in gold. "Maya Lewis, Director of International Relations, you earned this twice," he said softly. "Once through skill, once through courage." She stood there, trembling but proud, and realized something she'd never understood before. Being seen wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of responsibility. Later, as the crowd dispersed, a quiet voice spoke behind her. "Miss Lewis?" She turned. It was Maria, one of the dishwashers, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and calloused hands. She spoke in hesitant English. "I have a degree MBA from the Philippines. Not recognized here. I clean dishes. My daughter thinks that's all I can do." Maya felt tears rise again. "What languages do you speak?" "English, Spanish, Tagalog, Portuguese." Maya smiled. "Come to my office tomorrow. I'm hiring." Maria covered her mouth, crying silently. Maya squeezed her shoulder. "You deserve to be seen, too." That night, Maya walked home under a pale sky, her nameplate tucked under her arm, the city lights glittering like 1,000 open doors. She knew then that her story wasn't about survival anymore. It was about transformation for her, for Maria, for everyone who had ever been told to stay small. The following months would prove that what had started with a torn resume and a poisoned glass was about to turn into a movement that would reach far beyond the walls of the Viridian. 6 months passed like a blur. The Viridian was no longer just a restaurant. It had become a symbol. Every news outlet wanted the story of the waitress who saved 4 lives and rewrote her destiny with one act of courage. But Maya didn't care about fame. She cared about what came next. Richard had renamed the flagship restaurant the Mosaic, a name that reflected what Maya had built, a team woven from every language, culture, and background. The grand reopening drew diplomats, CEOs, and journalists. 300 guests filled the glittering dining hall. That afternoon, her phone rang. Kareem's assistant. "The sheikh will be attending tonight," he said. "He's bringing 20 guests, including members of the royal family." Maya exhaled sharply. 20 guests meant royal protocol, halal preparation, simultaneous interpretation, and layers of etiquette. It would take a week to prepare. She had 3 hours. 30 minutes later, another call. 15 executives from Tokyo were arriving early, not tomorrow as planned. 10 minutes after that, 8 German bankers called to confirm last-minute reservations. 43 VIPs, 3 languages, multiple dietary restrictions. When Veronica, now regional manager, heard the news, she rushed to Maya's office. "This is impossible." "You can't handle this in one night." Maya met her eyes calmly. "We promised everyone a seat at the table." "We'll keep that promise." She gathered her team. "Aisha, you handle the sheikh's delegation. You know the royal customs. Kyle, take the Japanese executives. Levy, coordinate kosher meals for the German bankers. They scattered like clockwork. The kitchen was chaos, but Maya's voice cut through it, steady and sure. She spoke Italian to Chef Marco, asking him to run 3 kitchens at once. He protested that it couldn't be done. Maya switched to fluent Italian, reminding him of the day he opened his first restaurant when everyone said it was impossible. You did it then, she said. You can do it now. He stared at her, surprised, then nodded. Let's make history. By the time the doors opened, every detail was ready. Then, another problem. The UAE diplomat demanded a specific seat already reserved for the Japanese CEO. Moving either guest could spark offense. Maya walked to Karim quietly and spoke to him in Arabic. Your Excellency, may I suggest an alternative seat? It offers a view of the entire dining room and kitchen, an honored position for those who appreciate the art of service. Karim smiled faintly. You've studied our customs well. I study people, she said. And everyone deserves respect, he agreed. Crisis averted. The evening unfolded in perfect rhythm. In one corner, Maya spoke Arabic to the sheikh's party. In another, she switched to Japanese for the executives, then to German for the bankers, Spanish for the kitchen, and English for the guests. Words flowed like music, no hesitation, no translation gaps. It felt like an orchestra, and she was the conductor. Halfway through the evening, Richard took the stage and handed her the microphone. Maya, he said, they should hear from the woman who made this possible. She froze for a second. No script, no notes, just truth. She stepped forward, her voice steady. Welcome to the Mosaic. Tonight isn't about food. It's about connection. We are all fluent in one language, the language of humanity. She switched to Arabic. True hospitality is not in words, but in the heart. Then to Japanese. Omotenashi is more than service. It is spirit, to German. Respect is universal. Back to English. When we listen, really listen, there are no barriers. Only bridges waiting to be built. The room fell silent. Then Karim stood and began to clap. The sound grew, spreading through the hall until everyone was standing. 300 people applauding not just a meal, but a message. Afterward, Karim found her near the kitchen doors. That night 6 months ago when I handed you that note, he said, I wasn't only warning you. I was testing the room. I wanted to see if anyone could understand. She looked at him, puzzled. Testing? He nodded. I knew whoever read that note would be someone society overlooks. Because people who study languages, they're not expected to know. People like you understand what most forget. What's that? She asked quietly. That communication is an act of love. Her eyes stung, but she smiled. Karim handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $100,000. For your foundation, he said. Train 100 more like you. People with talent and no door to walk through. Maya stared at the check. Her hands trembled. A foundation? Yes, build it. I'll fund the first year. That night, the idea took root. Within weeks, the Mosaic Foundation became real. A scholarship program for service workers, janitors, and drivers who spoke multiple languages or had hidden skills. They called it the Invisible Talent Project. The applications poured in. 100 stories of overlooked brilliance. Immigrants with degrees unrecognized here. Single mothers fluent in 5 languages. Refugees who once taught at universities now driving taxis. Maya read everyone. The faces blurred, but the stories stayed. She selected 100. 6 months of training. Language refinement, leadership, and business. The first day she stood before them, heart pounding. You're not here to serve, she said. You're here to lead. One student caught her attention immediately. Devin, 19, homeless, self-taught in Mandarin. He'd been helping Chinese tourists in subway stations just because he could. By week 8, he was translating for international guests. By week 20, he was designing bilingual menus that increased sales 30%, but the biggest surprise came one night when Veronica knocked on Maya's office door. I need to say something, she said. Quietly, Maya waited. I was wrong, Veronica said. When you walked in 5 years ago, I saw your talent and it terrified me. Because if you could be excellent without the pedigree I built my identity on, then everything I believed about success was fragile. I hurt you because I was afraid. Maya said nothing. I want to make it right, Veronica continued. I want to volunteer for the foundation. I can't undo what I did, but I can help others not repeat it. Maya studied her. The program needs mentors who can be honest. Can you do that? I can, Veronica said, her voice breaking. It's time. It wasn't forgiveness. It was growth. And that was enough. A few months later, the world noticed. National media covered the Invisible Talent Project. Then came an invitation from the United Nations. When Maya walked onto the stage at the UN General Assembly, she thought of her mother cleaning offices, whispering, "Learn something they can't take from you." "I stand here today," Maya said, her voice echoing across the chamber, "not because I'm exceptional, but because someone finally saw me. There are 68 million people working jobs below their skill level. They're not invisible. We're just not looking." She let the silence breathe. "Every one of us is here because someone opened a door. It's time we hold it open for others." The applause began as a murmur, then built until the entire hall was on its feet. Kareem stood first, starting that same slow, deliberate clap that had once filled a restaurant. Back home, the Mosaic thrived. Maria, the dishwasher who once told Maya she had an MBA, now worked as an international liaison, speaking 4 languages daily. Devin became assistant director of training. Veronica ran workshops on bias awareness. One evening, Maya walked through the dining room past table 8, where everything had started. Kareem was there again, smiling as he spoke to Maria, in Spanish this time. Testing her. She understood, replied fluently, her eyes bright. Across the room, Kareem met Maya's gaze and gave a knowing wink. She smiled back. The cycle was alive. Later that night, she stood alone in her office. On the wall hung her old waitress uniform, framed with a plaque beneath it. "This represents 68 million stories. We're just getting started." She looked at the rows of photographs beside it, faces of the first 100 scholars, each one once invisible, now seen. Richard entered quietly. "You know what I'm proudest of?" he asked. "The scholarship?" "No," he said with a smile. "That you proved me right. You weren't high potential, Maya. You're a movement." Kareem joined them. "Do you know why I truly wrote that note in Arabic?" he asked. "To warn your guests," she said. He shook his head gently. "Partly, but I also knew whoever could read it would be someone society overlooks, someone who understands the truth that communication at its heart is love." Maya turned to the wall of faces, her own reflection among them. "Then love built this," she said softly. A year later, in her old Brooklyn apartment, now the Foundation's headquarters, she sat at her desk surrounded by handwritten letters from the next generation of scholars. Among the new applications, one caught her eye. Maria Santos Jr., 22, daughter of a housekeeper. Speaks English, Tagalog, and Portuguese. Wants to prove that her mother's brilliance runs in the family. Maya smiled through tears and whispered, "Interview immediately." Her story had begun with a warning written on a folded piece of paper. It ended with thousands of new notes being written every day. Notes that said, "I see you. You matter. You belong." Because sometimes all it takes to change the world is one person brave enough to read the note no one else could.